Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea are democracies. Therefore, it is not the Chinese or Asians that are not ready for democracy. It is rather the Chinese regime that is not prepared to accept it and is unwilling to let it happen. Which then reminds me of what a former UN Secretary General said. It was never the people who complained of the universality of human rights, nor did the people consider human rights as a Western or Northern imposition. It was often their leaders who did so. Another significant example of cultural relativism is the introduction of Sharia or Islamic law in Europe, which has already been approved in the United Kingdom. This means that British citizens would continue to be ruled by British law, whereas their Muslim fellow citizens will be governed by the Islamic law, which for instance considers women as inferior and recognizes fewer rights to them. And this is where human rights cease to be universal. Is it really acceptable that a Muslim woman has fewer rights than her British fellow citizens? Allowing people of different culture and religious tradition to enjoy different human rights is extremely dangerous, and this is a trap in which we must not fall. This form of relativism is particularly wrong and hideous when we think of all the dissidents and human rights and democracy defenders who live under the threat of exile, torture, and execution by their regimes, for speaking up against abuses and injustice, for aspiring to those freedoms so clearly outlined 60 years ago in the Universal Declaration for Human Rights. Dissidents play a crucial role and we have a moral responsibility not to leave them alone, because their struggle is our struggle. Dr. China Jianli himself is a former political prisoner under the Chinese regime, and is a vivid example of courage, integrity, and commitment to democracy and human rights. As a European, I stand here today very proud at the recent announcement of the European Parliament that the Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought has been awarded to the Chinese political activist Hu Jia. A prominent human rights activist and dissident in the People's Republic of China. By granting this prestigious prize, the European Parliament firmly and resolutely acknowledges the daily struggle for freedom of all Chinese human rights defenders. It is a very important step forward and a clear sign of support to their cause. However, we also have to be very realistic about what we can expect from the European Union and from its national governments. It is increasingly clear that Europe has very limited leverage in advancing democracy and in demanding the respect of fundamental human rights from those governments with whom it engages. But more sadly, also the European Union and its governments have shown that their decisions are dictated mostly by commercial interests, to the detriment of the same very values and principles on which the European Union is founded. There is clearly a major gap between the European democracy promotion and human rights rhetoric and the reality of day-to-day commercial interests and security priorities. I realize that this image is probably very bleak and the situation may look depressing. However, the good news is that we, as people, as NGOs, as believers in freedom, democracy, and human rights, we have the power to bring change and to support those who are fighting for human rights or against authoritarian regimes. It is crucial that we join forces and share experience and expertise to build strong and effective solidarity movements. We know from experience from many dissidents how important it is to provide moral support and assistance. It is crucial that human rights defenders know that people in the free world think and care about them. We cannot leave them alone. We need to find ways to support them, every possible way. And let me tell you about how inspired I was by the powerful words of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I would like to remind what he said. And he said, I have a feeling that deep down we are all the same human beings. Therefore, it is quite natural that when some human brothers and sisters suffer, other brothers and sisters spontaneously develop some kind of sincere feeling or concern. It is therefore our moral obligation and responsibility to support in any way we can our pro-democracy brothers and sisters across the world. Let me reiterate, when I mentioned at the opening of my remarks that we all work in very similar areas and all have the same concerns and vision at heart. Therefore, it is crucially important that we join forces and work together in a struggle that is long-term, but it can nevertheless be won. Let's take advantage of this conference, of the next 3 days, for talking, sharing experiences, making new friends, and finding ways of setting goals and working together. And I would like to conclude by saying that every day I realize how privileged I am to have been born in a free country and to live in a democracy where I can enjoy the respect of fundamental freedoms. Freedoms to think, to express, to challenge, and to be challenged. But we all need to look beyond the freedoms we enjoy in our open and democratic societies and to work together for the day in which all of us will be free. Let us nurture the love for freedom and the sense of membership in one human family in which we all bear common responsibilities. The good news is that the impossible does happen. It just takes a little bit longer. Thank you.